Dr. Richard Bartlett is a Texas medical doctor who discovered a therapeutic drug used for asthma that also successfully treated COVID. Now, here's the problem. He had to convince the medical community, which wasn't easy. Richard, thank you so much for being here.
Well, I'm honored to be here, Shemane. Thank you.
So let's dive right into this situation. What do you think is going on with this incredible mask, no mask, vax, no vax, vaccine passports? Why are they pushing this issue so much? And where did COVID come from initially? Let's start there.
Oh my goodness.
We're going deep. We're going deep.
So I'm going to say medical tyranny. I cannot believe where we are now in our healthcare system in America. January 1, 2020, the American healthcare system got hijacked. And we had people who I'd never heard of before, all of a sudden on the world stage being leaders, like Anthony Fauci. I was a top medical advisor for Governor Rick Perry for 7 years on the Health Disparities Task Force. And at the end of 7 years, I was surprised to receive the Meritorious Service Award from the HHS commissioner. But I'd never heard of Anthony Fauci. And I'd not heard of a lot of these clowns that are showing up and telling us what to do and running our healthcare system off a cliff.
And since when is Bill Gates part of the healthcare
Right.
system? I thought he was in computers.
What the heck?
And speaking of that, tell me what you know about the nanotechnology and how it's... We're going to go deep.
I'm going to tell you what I do know,
Okay.
and I'm going to tell you if I don't know
Okay.
certain things. And I'm an emergency room doctor, and so I actually teach advanced. I guess 2 weeks ago, I taught advanced trauma life support to other ER doctors, and that's a course that every doctor has to have certification in if they're going to work in an emergency room anywhere in the United States. And so I don't just have certification in that, I teach doctors that. And in that, we teach airway, breathing, circulation, the basics of how to save a life. ABCs, airway, breathing, circulation. And COVID is a breathing problem. Everybody's figured that out.
Yeah.
And so, okay, we know that. So how do you explain at Medical Center Hospital in Odessa a policy of putting plastic equipment bags over people's heads that are low on oxygen when they come in the ER and test positive for COVID? Have you seen that?
No, were they actually doing that?
Not only doing it, they were doing it to minors. They were doing it to seniors that were coming from nursing homes. They were doing it to everybody that tested positive in the ER. And what alerted me to that was a picture that was on the internet of a child in a wheelchair without oxygen on, under the plastic bag with a mask. She looked humiliated. She looked anxious. And when I talked to the mother, she brought her to the ER because she was low on oxygen already. Her oxygen saturation was in the 80s. She was in distress. She needed oxygen. But hey, let's just have a policy where we put a plastic bag over someone's head. And then when she tried to take the mask off because she was claustrophobic, anxious, which is people feel anxious when they're low on oxygen, hypoxic. She was scolded, yelled at, and told to put the mask back on underneath the plastic bag and wore that for 30 minutes, according to the mother. In the pictures, it's clear that she does not have supplemental oxygen underneath the bag. And when the hospital was called out on that, they doubled down, Shemane, and they defended it in a public letter from the hospital administrator. But I have never heard what doctor signed off on that. I suspect no doctor ever was involved in that kind of ridiculous, nonsense, non-science, anti-medicine idea where in medicine we used to have bag 'em, bag the patient. That's where you put a bag and mask and you're giving supplemental oxygen, 100% oxygen.
Oh, okay. That sounds different.
But they've redefined that. They're putting equipment bags. Literally, I found what bag they were using and ordered me a box of it for $180. It comes in rolls, Shemane. Like when you go to the grocery store and you go to the produce section and you're going to rip a plastic bag off and you're going to put your head of lettuce in it. Well, They're ripping. They literally have a roll of these equipment bags that are made for equipment, not for patients, and rip it off the roll and then stick it over someone's head that's low on oxygen. Tell me where that came from. I'm telling you, everything that's being done in the name of COVID is not appropriate. And they think they can get away with anything in the name of COVID. Like #science. Really? What science? Science fiction. But it's dangerous, at least. You could kill someone by putting a plastic bag over their head. As a matter of fact, Shemane, if you did that at a nursing home, where putting plastic bags over people's heads, you would go to jail. If you did that in a daycare, you would go to jail. This was a child. I don't think any charges were ever filed.
So you were the first one that I know of to really speak out about this, and that you had another, I want to say, alternative remedy for curing COVID. You spoke out about it, and what kind of backlash did you get?
Well, in March 2020, we were 3 months into the pandemic, and we were told there's nothing you can do. And you were so gracious to have me on your show shortly after I had this breakthrough, where I was working a 48-hour shift in the ER, and patient after patient, 3 months into the pandemic, taking care of car wrecks, heart attacks, sewing up lacerations.
First of all, a 48-hour shift in the ER. Who's in charge of those rules for doctors? I would rather have the doctor be on the front end of the 48-hour shift than the 40-hour shift.
It's not for everyone. But we have a call room, and so when there's no patients, I can go take a cat nap, and this has been my lifestyle for 30 years. And so, there's different kinds of lifestyles. There's military, there's emergency medicine, there's dermatology, there's all kinds of things you could do. But in my situation, I was working that 48-hour shift, and I was in between patients praying, Lord, what do I do if someone comes in here and they're dying of COVID? Because we were told there's nothing that we can do. As a matter of fact, they were told, everybody was being told by Fauci, and it was being echoed by the CDC and the health departments, that if you have COVID, if you got mild to moderate symptoms, just take Tylenol and tough it out at home and wait till you got severe symptoms. Wait till you got late disease and then seek help, right? And so where's the logic in that? Have we ever told anybody, if you got cancer, wait till you got stage 4 cancer and then seek help? Have we ever said, if you're having a heart attack, wait till you're unconscious and flipping around on the floor like a fish out of water and then call 911? We've never said wait. We've said early care saves lives. But back to my story, I'm working a 48-hour shift, and I'm praying because I'm a Christian, and, I believe God answers prayer, and I need help. And, Lord, there's nothing that we're told there's nothing you can do. What am I going to do if someone comes in here and says, I can't breathe, and they have COVID? And so have a break, go to the call room, take a cat nap while I'm asleep. A strategy comes to me. I wake up, I was euphoric. I had no one to celebrate with in the call room, but 5 days later I had my first patients. And they had diabetes, they had asthma, they were overweight, and they lived. They recovered quick, and the hospital was shocked. And then... Did
they ask you, or did they tell you when a COVID patient comes in, you must do X, Y, and Z, or did you just...
So hospitals have hospital protocols, and those protocols were set by they don't have to follow these, but they're told to, and so they're following the CDC protocol as their pat answer. But in the patients that I'm taking care of them many times in the ER, I'm taking care of them in outpatient, and I'm trying to keep them out of the hospital. More than ever at this point, with what we're seeing happening in the hospitals, the last place I want people to be is in the hospital. If at all possible, don't go to the hospital.
Right.
If at all possible.
Right. It's now it's a death sentence if you go to the hospital. If you're bad enough, if you get COVID and you're bad enough, the hospital is the last resort. And when did it happen that
I mention January 1, 2020, the healthcare system got hijacked? That we've been passed up by India and other countries as far as healthcare. They're giving better healthcare. They got better policies for early treatment of COVID than we do. And I got evidence of it. It's out there. This December, I don't want to cut too far ahead in my story. while I was in that call room, that's where I got the strategy, and I was shocked at how well it worked. And I had people who had stage 4 cancer that were on chemo. They beat COVID, but they still had to get their chemo for their stage 4 cancer. But they beat COVID. If they could beat COVID, then we can all live. We could all beat COVID. And 95-year-old beat COVID. If a 95-year-old can beat it, then you're not too old to beat COVID. I found no limits with early treatment. And so what
was the treatment?
The treatment is an inhaled steroid called budesonide, aspirin, and an antibiotic called clarithromycin. That antibiotic covers the encapsulated bacteria called Streptococcus pneumonia, and it also covers the walking pneumonia that is not covered by penicillins and cephalosporins. So it covers everything that would cause a pneumonia. And so it's the perfect fit. So anyways, I started doing reverse engineering, saying, why is this working so well? It's working better than I would have expected, because I've used this medicine, budesonide, for decades, but I've never seen it be so effective. It was almost like it was made for this particular pandemic. And when I did the research, I found the inflammatory chemicals called cytokines released from the lung lining are tumor necrosis factor, interleukin 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 11, 13, 15, cyclooxygenase, which is what ibuprofen works on and Aleve works on, thromboxane, which increases your risk of clotting. That's why people are having heart attacks, strokes, and clots in the lungs with COVID. Leukotrienes, that's blocked by Singulair. Singulair is an over-the-counter asthma allergy medicine. I mean, a prescription one. And so guess what budesonide blocks the release of? Exactly. If you overlaid it over all of those things, it blocks the release of every single one of them at the source. And
so why aren't more doctors open to this? I mean, doctors are actually, I have a doctor who said, nope, you need to get the vaccine. When Ted and I got COVID, well, Ted actually got it.
Here's what you do. If you have a doctor that says that,
yeah,
you have the option and you have the right in the United States to do what President Trump taught you. Shemane, put your finger like this and say, you're fired. And you can get a new doctor. Mm-hmm. You have that right
but
outside of the hospital and in the hospital.
Not many doctors are on your protocol. They don't really. So why are so many doctors pushing that agenda and not just saying, Shemane, you and your husband are sick. Make sure you get a lot of fluids. Take vitamin C. Take vitamin D. Take niacin. Take all these vitamins. Go out and get some beautiful sunshine. Eat good. Have an apple a day. Drink a lot of fluids. Get some rest.
Shemane, a lot of people. So I talk to doctors. I've talked to pulmonologists and infectious disease doctors up in New York. I've talked to doctors all over the country. Some of them are brilliant. Some of them are willing to use their brain, lean on their years of training and experience, and make good medical judgments about decision making. But others are parrots. They just repeat what the CDC says. And I've literally had doctors agree after I explain the science and I talk out and explain the medical studies, the randomized controlled trials, and I tell them about that. They agree 100%. And then I say, well, why you're telling me that you will not give this medicine that the family's requesting for this patient on the ventilator because it's not the hospital policy? That's the only reason? And they'll say yes. I cannot believe that there's been a shift from taking care of patients and patient rights and the patients being involved in their care to we're only going to please the hospital. We're only going to please the government. It's a point where right now where a lot of doctors are of the mindset that it's your body, the government's choice.
Yeah, what happened to my body, my choice? And why couldn't I say on social media that when Ted and I didn't get tested, so I don't know, but I'm pretty darn sure I had COVID. He tested positive. We took hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin. Why can't I say that?
How can you say those words?
I know. It's we've lost the freedom of speech.
Yes.
My
It's under attack, and I'm not quitting.
Well, we've lost it. I'm permanently banned from Twitter. I can't say hydroxychloroquine on social media. I can't say things like that's what helped me. I get exercise. I eat right. I try to drink a lot of fluids, but there's no other prescription than if you get COVID, if you, well, yes, but no other doctors are offering that. If you get COVID, they tell you to go home.
Right.
What prescription do they give you?
So how did that work? I mean, they were saying if you got mild to moderate symptoms, stay home. That was number one misinformation from Anthony Fauci that was deadly for many people.
Well, okay, let's go here. Why did they tell us to stay home? Why did they separate us 6 feet? Why did they have us wear masks? I'm going to jump ship a little bit and go over to how does 5G play into all of this?
Shemane. So, so did you see the Super Bowl?
No, I don't.
I'm just saying.
Yeah,
even
I knew
just walking past the room during commercials or news stories about it, I saw that there was no one wearing masks. Did you hear that? In California? And so there are nations that are dropping the mask mandates. They're dropping the vaccine mandates. They're dropping the vaccine passports. Why? Because the science is coming out. It's undeniable. The truth is leaking out, and they cannot suppress the truth enough anymore. And so when you look at the facts, nations like the UK that have socialized medicine, when they put out their report of 10.8 million people, and they showed that after each COVID shot, for the 2 weeks following the first shot, the 2 weeks following the second shot, the 2 weeks following the third shot, there's a spike of heart attacks and myocarditis, inflammation of the heart. That's abnormal. We've never had anything like that with any real vaccine before. We've never had that. And I'm an ER doctor, by the way. And so in the ER, I have taken care of people who have come in, like the 62-year-old who was in good health, who went to the very popular chain drugstore that starts with a W and got her COVID shot. And then 2 hours later, she's my patient. She can't feel anything on the left side of her body. She can't move her left arm. She's got motor deficits, sensory deficits. She's had a stroke. And she had it only because the in-laws would not visit her unless she got the shot. Her life is destroyed. Her health is stolen. And you know what? She has no recourse against the pharmaceutical company that made the vaccine unless there's evidence of fraud, by the way. And then if you got evidence of fraud, hello. Yeah, you and I would say that's obvious.
Yes.
But did you know that the studies that Pfizer did before they submitted to the FDA to get emergency use authorization approval, there was an effort to suppress that information going to the public? A brilliant attorney named Aaron Siri did a FOIA, Freedom of Information Act lawsuit. And so I was sitting with him in the federal courthouse in Fort Worth, where the FDA lawyers and, surprisingly, Pfizer had hired 3 very expensive lawyers to be there as well. They weren't invited. What were they doing there? This was about the FDA releasing that information to the doctors and scientists and the public so that we could give informed consent. There's this idea that in the United States that, you can buy a used car, but you can check the Carfax, right?
Right.
And so why do we check the Carfax? Because you have a right when you're going to buy something to know what you're getting, the good and the bad, the risk and the benefits. Especially, you can buy a new car, but you can't buy a new body.
Right.
And so, this is part of your mission right now is to tell people about their health.
To do their own research and find out what works best for them and be smart about it. Don't go to just one source. If you think there's something unusual, like why would they roll out that shot, the vaccine, so quickly? And I want to get back to why did they make you stay home? And during the dark of night, the 5G towers went up.
Many things are going on.
Many things are going on.
Many things.
And doesn't 5G, the 5G illness symptoms, don't they mimic COVID?
Shemane, again, I'm going to say, I'm an ER doctor, so I'm going to tell you what I have seen. And so in the ER, I've had the lady that had the stroke. I had a lady who comes in with over the last 3 weeks after she gets her COVID shot. She has numbness in her feet. She'd never had that before. and then it progresses up her legs, and then she has weakness, and then she's paralyzed. She rolls into my ER as my patient, and she's paralyzed from the waist down with an ascending paralysis of Guillain-Barré syndrome, all started after a COVID shot.
And she has no recourse.
She has no recourse. The laws have been passed to give the pharmaceutical companies that make vaccines immunity from getting sued. And so even if you have evidence, overwhelming evidence beyond a shadow of a doubt that a vaccine killed your loved one, killed your child, you cannot sue the pharmaceutical company. They're protected from liability.
But people don't know that.
They know it now because you're telling them.
Yes. And more people like you are speaking out. But the problem is there's still a mass hypnosis of people just believing the science, which is not the science, and Anthony Fauci and people who are, masks work. No, they don't work. They're going back and forth. You should wear a mask. You should not wear a mask. You should get vaccinated. We should have vaccine passports. My thought is, why is this happening so fast? What is the ultimate agenda? Now we know COVID is kind of going away. And isn't it unusual that it's going away when our eyes are being distracted to see what's going on in Ukraine?
Right. There's misinformation, disinformation, there's deception, clearly. And that brings me back to that federal courthouse where Aaron Siri had filed the suit so that information of the effectiveness and the safety of the vaccines that was presented to the FDA to get approval was supposed to be given to the public, to the doctor, so they could give informed consent. How can a doctor tell someone what the risk is if we don't have the information? This is really simple. We need that information. But the FDA was dragging their feet, had a hearing after the fact, even after the judge said, you have to give this information out over the next 10 months. That means for the next 10 months, all those people that are going to get a shot are not going to be told the risk and the benefits or the effectiveness that's been proven in those studies.
And
But the FDA at one point was saying they wanted 75 years to put that information out. What? What are we, sea turtles that live hundreds of years? How about us humans? 75 years is a lifetime.
Why are people buying into this blindly? You
got to be careful what you listen to, Shemane.
Yeah.
If you hear the same thing over and over and over, even in your subconscious, you start to believe it. And you might feel awkward if you're the only one that's thinking this, and then you might think, well, maybe I'm the one that's off, and you readjust. And so that's what happens. You got to be careful who you listen to. Mm-hmm. And so, but let's talk about the voices out there. You mentioned Anthony Fauci saying that the public should not wear a mask. And then he said we should wear it because and he did this. It's a symbol that we're in it together, with air quotes with his fingers. And then he said everybody should wear a mask. And then he said if you get the shot, you don't need a mask. And then he says if you get the shot, you need a mask. And then he says 2 masks. But the governments of the world right now are showing that there's no evidence for it. And so it's being rolled back. And that's why, there's a major pushback now from governments that are not under the direct sway of Anthony Fauci. And here's my concern. I'm just going to throw it out there because it just came to me, that the World Health Organization and the UN are making a move right now to be able to trump every government's healthcare system and tell American citizens what they're supposed to do for the next crisis, where they can say, you have to do this, whatever it is, no matter how ridiculous it is. And look what's happened, putting bags over people's heads that are low on oxygen in the name of COVID. If they told us to do that, we wouldn't have our American basic constitutional rights to push back and say that, no, we're not going to do that to our children. So we don't want the UN and the World Health Organization telling us what to do. We're American citizens. But
the problem is our administration, our current administration, is pushing that agenda. And there's a much deeper and larger agenda. Before we wrap up, I want to go quickly to what I started out with. Tell me about the nanotechnology that's in the shot.
So there's a lot of things that are in the vaccines. And when you I don't know if you've seen any of the reports about the inserts for the vaccines, how they're blank.
Yes,
you
there's
unfold
nothing there.
Nothing. And so what is supposed to be on those papers? If you get a package insert for any medicine, it's got the risks, the benefits, the contraindications, whether it's pregnancy category A, B, C, the risk to a fetus, whether it causes cancer.
Right.
Oh, let's just keep it totally blank. So I'm going to tell you what I believe. When it was emergency use authorization, it was experimental. And when you're doing an experiment on an animal with humans, you have a placebo arm of the study. And so you got to keep it a double-blind, randomized controlled trial where nobody knows what they're getting and nobody that's a pharmacist knows what they're giving. And so then you have the lot numbers, and so somebody way up in the federal government knows who got what. But they're the only ones that know who got what. Where's that fit in with the Nuremberg Code where you're supposed to not do human experimentation and you're supposed to give informed consent and you're supposed to have evidence that it's more helpful than harmful? One of the studies that came out very early that caught my attention was, and it leaked out, they didn't know that they were giving that information or they wouldn't have put it out there, that in the first trimester, 81% miscarriage rate with the shot. Did you know that? 81% miscarriage rate with the shot.
Most people don't. Back to the nanotechnology.
Nanotechnology. So this is along with a lot of the things that are in the vaccines. So the nanotechnology is involved in trying to get the messenger RNA across the blood-brain barrier. And there's a lot of concerns that it might somehow be connected to 5G. There's reports of that.
Why is there graphene oxide in the shot?
Right. Why aren't they telling us this in the shot? Why? That's not in any other vaccine, just kind of like SM-102 from the Cayman Chemical Company. When you look at the OSHA paper that the Cayman Chemical Company turned into our federal government, to OSHA, for safety and health oversight, it's 14 pages, and it says at the top in huge bold letters, not for human or animal use. Well, that's a clue. And it's not in any other shot or any other medicine. How do they slip that in without that being something that's even discussed or at least told to us? And it also says that it can cause cancer, that it can cause miscarriage, that it can cause birth defects, infertility. I'm thinking none of those sound very good to me.
Right.
Why is that in any medicine or any shot? And why are we not being told that it's in there?
And every commercial, when I do watch TV, but I don't, every commercial is some type of drug that they're promoting. And the side effects, they do list some of the side effects where,
You know why? For liability purposes. They have to say.
But my point is, let's go back to, I'm a hunter now. Since I've been
You're
married,
a hunter-gatherer?
I'm a hunter-gatherer. Since I've been married to my husband for 33 years, I used to kind of push that agenda aside of living the hunting lifestyle. I know that's what he did, but now more than ever, I am proud to be a hunter. I am proud to know where my sustenance comes from. If something happened that was devastating and the lights went out, we're fine. We're not going to starve. But I think more people need to get on that bandwagon and return to the lifestyle of our ancestors, where we were living off the land more, rather than listening to big government and big pharma.
Yeah, you hear about Bill Gates buying up a lot of farmland. You hear about China buying hundreds of thousands of acres. There's a gentleman running for U.S. Senate, Jackson Lawmeyer for Oklahoma, and one of his big pet peeves, one of the major things that he's concerned about, is all the land in Oklahoma that's been bought up by China. What the heck is going on right now?
There's
Something's
a lot
going
here
on
in Texas
yes,
too.
Absolutely.
There is something going on, and gosh, I could talk to you for a long time about this, and I hope you can come back and we'll do more and more interviews about this, because people need to know. People need to wake up, do their own research. I think I was forced to wake up because I got sick and almost died from toxic mold exposure.
Yes.
Nobody could help me. There were no doctors. This was about 20 years ago, so nobody said you need to basically detoxify your body. I did infrared sauna, vitamin IV, oxygen every day, changed my diet, and I got healthier. It took a lot longer than taking a drug and covering the problem and making me feel temporarily better. But I think more and more people need to go back to our roots of our ancestors.
Our roots are, we have certain rights that were given to us by God. And the government, in the Bill of Rights and in the Constitution, it says that those is to protect the government from taking those rights from us, is what the Constitution and the Bill of Rights is about. And so those rights were given to us by God, if you want to bring it way back. And so basic right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the truth is, we cannot buy everything that's being sold. We can't buy everything they're saying. We can't just swallow everything someone says just because they're the authority figure. That's what happened with Joseph Mengele, who was the government spokesman doctor. And you didn't speak against him or you were in trouble. Well, I'm telling you what, this is the United States of America, and we do have rights, and we are united. United we do stand. And they're trying to divide us every way they can, but they're losing. And this still is the land of the free, the home of the brave, and we need to watch out for our neighbors. And yes, we need to get back to the basics. We need to know what we're eating. We need to know what medicines they're trying to put in our body. And your child, not the government's choice. And my child, not the government's choice. I think the government's proven that they're not as good a parent as you are, Shemane. And as the American people are smarter than they give us credit for. There's a lot of common sense still in the United States. And so we need to give people credit. And they don't give the people the credit.
That's right.
But you and I are here telling the good news that there's hope. We're not helpless or hopeless. This is an election time. And we need to get new government leaders that will support our basic constitutional rights, our basic health care rights, our basic patient rights that have been trampled over and over again. I have story after story of nightmares that people are living through right now, but you're hearing them too. It is happening across our country right now, and enough is enough.
I agree. Well, Richard, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you will come back and let's check in and see how things are going in another few weeks. But thank you so much for being bold and brave and speaking out, and I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you, Shemane.